Welcome to the Real Movie Fanatics.
My name is Turk.
And my name is Raz. Well, for this retro roundtable, you could say it is stuff of legends. That's right, we're doing Legends of the Fall. It is the 1994 film based on the 1979 novel by Jim Harrison, detailing the generational saga of the Ludlow clan living in the wilderness and plains of Montana in the early 20th century and how their lives are affected by nature, history, war, and love. The film is directed by Edward Zwick, who's famous for directing Glory. He's also directed The Last Samurai. He also directed Courage Under Fire. He directed Blood Diamond, and many other good films. The film stars Brad Pitt, Aidan Quinn, Julia Ormond, and Sir Anthony Hopkins. The score was provided by the late master James Horner. The film opened in a limited release on December 23rd, 1994, and expanded to a wide release on January 13th, 1995. The film brought in a final box office total of $168 million worldwide against a $30 million budget. The film was a financial success.
Well, that is pretty good for a love story.
Yeah, it is, but this is in the mid 1990s, and those movies were like a really big deal, and they were actually quite well done at that time.
They were. I believe that was peak Hollywood.
I agree with you. If you think about peak Hollywood, actually that year, Pulp Fiction was released and Shawshank Redemption. There was a lot of good movies. Even movies like period pieces were very popular at that time. There was like Sense and Sensibility, Remains of the Day. There was all kinds of good movies that expanded through the period.
Yeah, no, I agree. They took their time with them and they really told great stories.
They did. Okay, so we're going to talk about our first impressions of the film. Yours is going to be a little bit different because actually this rewatch, as we normally do, is actually your first watch. So your first watch is your rewatch and your first watch. So I'll start with my first impression of this film. I knew Brad Pitt was on the rise at this time because he was in Thelma and Louise. There was a movie, California, which had starred Juliette Lewis and also David Duchovny. And then, of course, Interview with the Vampire was a vehicle that kind of led into this. So originally I never actually had interest in this movie. To me it's like romance, blah, bullshit. At the time it wasn't until I was actually recommended to me from a friend who worked at a video store. He's like, man, you gotta watch Legends of the Fall. I'm like, why would I watch that bullshit? He's like, no, you don't get it. Brad Pitt is awesome in this movie. He kills Nazis. And actually under that recommendation of Brad Pitt in World War I, I'm like, yeah, I want to see him scalp some Nazis. So I actually watched it, and actually I thought it was a really well done movie. I enjoyed it. It had everything in there. I think the acting, the scenery, the period that it was set, and also it was a great movie to watch.
I really enjoyed it, actually. It had a lot of different things. Like it felt like there was many stories being told in one giant grand story.
Yes.
And all the brothers were so very different from each other. So that was really cool to see because they played off each other really well. Just the family dynamic, the infighting in the family, the different directions they took in life. Like it was a really well written movie. The script was great. There was no cheap lines or anything in this. So I thought it was really well done, and this will probably be a classic for years to come for sure.
Yes, and it's definitely a great movie if you are on a date or if you have a spouse or anything like this. This is a go-to one. You can watch it anytime.
Yeah, and also I thought the music, like you said, from James Horner was awesome. Just really good. One of my favorite parts of the film. And yeah, I had no idea what I was going into when I first watched it, so I was actually quite surprised about how much was really in this movie. I was like, holy shit, like there's a lot happening. So I was quite surprised, but I was pleasant surprised.
Because you're obviously watching it later on in your life there, so sometimes watching these old movies, it can have like kind of two directions it can go. It could be like, man, this is awesome, I wish I would have discovered this sooner. Or it's like, you know what, I kind of wish I watched this sooner, maybe I would appreciate it more, but at this stage in my life it doesn't really work for me. But so I'm glad it worked for you. And like to go to my rewatch again, I haven't watched this in years, so it was a lot of fun to watch it again. It was like, man, this is a good movie. And the thing is this movie felt so grand and big, but really most of it is set on a farm in Montana. Yes, they go into town, and yes, there's set pieces, and actually it is kind of a global movie, but man, it's really contained.
No, they did a great job of bringing the entire world into this movie, really, because like you said, they traveled a bit from the farm to in town to Germany and all the, into Canada. No, they never actually showed Canada. Well, they did technically because it was filmed in Alberta.
They did go to Canada to enlist.
That's right, yeah.
Which you don't really know where.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing is that if we take out of this, I'm surprised that Edward Zwick actually doesn't direct more big movies, because like if you think about this movie, if you think about Glory, you think about The Last Samurai, he has a talent of making films feel epic and huge on a small scale. He does a good job personalizing between characters, if it's family or friendships or whatever. He does a fantastic job.
I agree. Yeah, he's definitely got my vote.
Yes, he does. Okay, so basically, if you haven't seen this film, you know what? Shut this off right now and go watch it. But we're going to basically just highlight the story here, and then we'll break it down. Legend of the Fall is basically a sweeping melodramatic saga of three brothers, their powerful father, and a beautiful woman, Julia Ormond. The popular period drama Legends of the Fall presents a romanticized view of a rugged masculinity against lush Montana scenery, and the scenery is fantastic in this. Like we said, based on a novel by Jim Harrison, the film covers decades in the lives of Alfred, played by Aidan Quinn, Tristan, played by Brad Pitt, Samuel, played by Henry Thomas, Ludlow, the sons of a retired military William Ludlow, Anthony Hopkins, raised by the unorthodox Ludlow after the departure of their mother. The boys grow up close, sharing an appreciation of the land and a pioneering spirit. The family becomes divided, however, when, of course, a young Sam enlists in World War I over his father's objections, and his brothers follow suit to protect him. Despite their efforts, Sam dies in battle, leaving Alfred Tristan to return home and deal with the lingering torment. Further complicating matters is the presence of Sam's beautiful fiancée, Susanna, played by Julia Ormond. After Sam's death, she attracts the romantic attention of both the responsible Alfred and the brooding Tristan, a conflict that threatens to drive brothers apart. Aspiring to epic status, the film utilizes period detail and attractive landscapes as a backdrop for tragedy. So essentially, that's the movie in a nutshell, and it is fantastic, like we said. Okay, Turk, it's time to break down this movie. Kind of talked about Canada. Legends of the Fall was primarily filmed on the location in Alberta and British Columbia.
Yeah, you can see the Rocky Mountains in the background. That's what kind of tipped it off.
And the World War I battle scenes took 2 weeks to film and were shot near Morley, Alberta, which is hundreds of locals and a few Canadian Force soldiers recruited as extras. The Gulf River Wilderness area in Alberta served as the film location of the Ludlow Ranch. Yeah, you could just tell, you're like, if you haven't been to the Rocky Mountains or Alberta or BC, you know that, this was filmed probably in Canada somewhere. Additional scenes as the funeral and cemetery scenes were shot at the Bow River near Banff National Park. Historical harbor area in Vancouver called Gastown was augmented with period building facets for the Helena, Montana street scenes. Hotel scenes were shot at the Hotel Europe at 43 Powell Street in Vancouver. Additional scenes were shot at Maple Trees Square in Gaston, Vancouver, and Echo Rio St. Anne, Jamaica. Yeah, there is some scenes in this movie that he's across sea and it's Jamaica as he becomes kind of like a worldwide hunter, but it's not really highlighted too much.
No.
I guess the important thing out of this is that if anyone really knows, is Turk and I are Canadians, and actually Turk grew up in the BC area.
I did, so it was nice seeing the mountains again.
What I like about this movie, and I'm sure you enjoyed it too, is it spans decade before World War I through the Prohibition area and into the 1930s, and the movie ends with a brief scene in 1963. So there's a lot of time covered in this movie.
Yeah, there definitely was. Yeah,
and it's not that long of a movie.
Played pretty good. The pacing was decent.
The best moving part in this movie is the performance by the main actors. I think Anthony Hopkins speaks for itself, but this movie was a really great driving vehicle for Brad Pitt. But I would say the most understated performance to me was Aidan Quinn's role as the eldest brother, a character who always tried to do everything right, but it never seemed enough. In a way, he was always an outsider to the family until the end when his father embraces him, and at that point you really are hoping that they would rekindle their relationships. brothers and fathers and son.
I don't really have a lot on his character, but you're right. It was interesting to see like the discussion he had with Tristan when he said, I've done everything by the book and I still can't get her. She still keeps coming back to you. And when they were talking about Susanna, she just loved the wildness of Tristan. And that was really cool. Even though Tristan never followed any rules, he broke all the rules. He lived by the seat of his pants. He traveled the world on a whim, and then he came back years later and she would wait for him. But anyways, yeah, that was really cool to see how that conversation played out between Tristan and his older brother, just, because he realized, like, I'm a congressman and I played by the book and I still can't win over a girl. Like, how does that work, And so that's really all I have. I mean, all the acting in this movie was great. So I can't fault anybody for any poor performances. I thought it was all really well done.
This movie is really heavily set with lots of tragedy and sorrow. What I enjoyed earlier in the film was the lightheartedness between the family. Like the brothers would be wrestling, they'd be making fun, they'd be throwing each other under the bus. Alfred and Tristan kicking at each other at the supper table in particular kind of made me chuckle. It just shows you little light touches of family intimacy, and especially at the supper table in the beginning there, this mess washing. Kurt, love the girl's expression as they're carrying on like that. In a way, he's kind of amused and disapproving all at the same time, and I always liked how Anthony Hopkins kind of captured that. Anthony Hopkins is another person here, again, he can get really lost in that this is a Brad Pitt movie, and yes, he carries the movie. Because, some people would say, with Interview with the Vampire, really the person that stole the show was Tom Cruise. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, Brad Pitt did a good job in that film, but he felt a little bit, I don't know, as an actor, just I don't want to say out of place, but just kind of finding his way, where this is a Brad Pitt movie. He's front and center, and he's fantastic. He plays the rugged, pretty boy really well. And he's been doing that for since then. Yeah, he does. He was my favorite character in this movie. I really appreciated him. And like you said, I thought he carried the film as well. I even wrote that down. So it's pretty cool that we see the same Brad Pitt in this film. Yeah, and the movie had a lot of good stuff. I think characters, chemistry, you can see that the actors probably really like acting with each other. You probably were friends. The chemistry was really well with all the people who were involved, the main characters, some of the supporting characters. You really liked their interactions with each other. And another thing that really stood out to me is the film kind of begins and ends with Tristan getting attacked by a bear, both as a child and as an old man. And the narration from One Stab, who I really enjoyed actually depicting this family for us. The saying is that Tristan was looking for a warrior's death, kind of like a samurai, and he was in a hurry for it as a young child when he's going after that bear, and he almost does get killed there. Yeah, he got his claw there. Yeah, kind of piggyback on the One Stab. I think this movie really actually does have some good indigenous sensibilities. If you look at the children, especially Tristan, was greatly influenced by them and his lifestyle. And you learn throughout the whole movie that is actually one of the reasons Anthony Hopkins, Colonel Ludlow, was really dejected with government and also the military, because at the end there he just realized basically he was just a patsy doing the government's bidding to subjugate these people and tear them and their children and murder and all this. So I think the movie really does that. Shout out to Gordon Tatusis, who plays One Stab, a great First Nations actor who we've seen in many films, and it's always awesome to see him in a movie. I wasn't sure if that was really him with the makeup at the end there, because it looked like a really elder indigenous person. Yeah. He looked similar, but because the makeup was so good. Yeah, it could have been. But I don't know, it could be two different actors, because I know for at the end of the movie, the bear attack on the older Tristan, they tried to do makeup tests with Brad Pitt, but apparently just didn't look good enough, so they just went with an older actor. Well, actually, that person that was in the fight with the bear at the end is that bear's trainer in life. Yeah. I think the bear's real name in real life is Bart the bear. Yes, Bart the bear has been in many movies. He actually ends up co-starring with Anthony Hopkins in The Edge. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, apparently they did it so that because the trainer, the guy who trains Bart the bear, Bart would only wrestle with that guy, and it's to be safe, right? So that's why they did that, and they made the scene really blurry, so you couldn't really tell who was, you couldn't tell that it was not
Brad Pitt. So they did a good job.
Yeah, and also when they were with the scenes with the bear, obviously you can't have food and anywhere near the vicinity, and also women cannot really be on that time of the month because that could attract the bear, so it could lead to attacks.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, they had to be very careful when they're filming with these scenes. But it's not like a dog where you can really train.
No, that was what, a 2,000-pound animal? Holy shit!
Absolutely. Another big theme in this movie I really enjoyed and is the big brother instinct. And you see, like right from the start, they actually narrated that Alfred is protective of his younger brothers. Tristan is highly protective of Samuel. Like one stab even says that they treated him almost like a treasure, which was the cause for Tristan being a heroic. In the movie, both Samuel and Alfred, they go for political reasons and duty, where Tristan just takes along because he's there to protect his brothers, specifically Samuel.
Yeah, because at the first thought, when they all said that they were going to go to war, I didn't actually think Tristan was going to go. And then all of a sudden he's like, yeah, I'm going. I got to watch over my brother. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and then when Colonel Ludlow is saying bye to his boys, he calls them, and you can tell he calls them probably in the order in a way that he kind of loves them, because Alfred first, and he's the elder son, and like he's older and wiser beyond his years. So, and I think he had more of characteristics and personality like the mother, Isabel, who, like they say in the movie, because the movie doesn't really highlight their mother, because the mother, would go back to England, and because she couldn't handle the cold climate there or whatever, but as one step says, she was a weird lady.
Yeah.
It is unfortunate because she does do a little bit of voiceover through letter writing with the characters, and she does show up periodically, but I thought that was one of my, if I had to criticize the movie, I don't know if it was due to time constraints of it or narration, but this was a character that kind of came in and out and really at the end of the day played really no significance into the movie. It was just something that she was like a device in a way.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And back to like the heroics there, because with the brothers, Alfred saves Tristan in the end by shooting the corrupt sheriff with the last O'Banion brother with a shot. Brothers, through and through, this movie really shows you that family is, blood is thicker than water.
It is. Another character that I really appreciated was Julia Ormond's character, Susanna. I thought she was amazing. She was very captivating and convincing in her role. And seeing her downfall near the end there was really tragic to see just how much in love she was with Tristan, but she could never really get to him because the timeline just never worked out for both of them, because he was always on this whatever it was, finding himself amongst the world, being a hunter, and she waited and waited and waited for him, but he never came.
Well, she actually ended up not really waiting for him. There's a little bit of hypocrisy, but she just wait, like she said. But also, Tristan's definitely stands out compared to his brothers. Like even his name itself, Tristan, and then the other brothers, Alfred and Samuel. So they're ordinary names. So you can tell Tristan is just something different. He's adventurous. He's carefree by nature. Alfred and Samuel are way more sophisticated than he is, but Tristan was their favorite. You know what I mean? Like everyone loved Tristan more.
Well, it seemed like that Tristan was the only one willing to do a lot of the work on the farm and stuff, and the other guys had aspirations to go elsewhere. It didn't seem like they would ever stay there. But Tristan is like the type of guy that he would like take over the farm for his dad.
When that kind of leads to their mother, Isabel, they really, like one staff says, that he didn't really have much to do with her because he just didn't get her. And it's kind of interesting. I think one of the reasons why she left was just not just the cold weather, but she was scared of bears. Irony of that, of her being afraid of bears, is actually her one son does end up meeting his end to the bear, which is funny.
That's right.
And also, like, I think another narrative in this movie is basically, like you said, Tristan is a doom magnet. Everyone he loved died young. According to one stab. So it's like he was supposed to be the one to die before, everybody else. He was looking for it, but he ended up outliving all of them.
That's true.
Like one stab even said, I never thought he would live to be an old man. He was wrong. He kind of summarized in the movies like, well, Tristan basically is a rock that they broke themselves against. I mean, he tried so hard to protect them. They just, they would break on him.
Yep.
And then like you said, Julia Ormond is like, I think she's a very underappreciated actress, and like she's just gorgeous in this movie. And I think in real life, she kind of has a similarity to the Susanna. I don't know about her parents, because like if you think about Susanna, she lost her parents, so she's a person that really felt alone in the movie. And then she, was going to have maybe through Samuel this new family. But in the end, after Samuel in the end, Samuel was the best choice for Susanna, because even when she had Tristan, he wasn't happy with her. He didn't love her the way she did. So really, it was kind of like a dour relationship. Because if you look at Isabel too, the daughter of Decker, Tristan had a great relationship with her, with the brief scenes with them, with their kids and them together, versus his relationship even with Susanna. And obviously Susanna and Alfred was like cold as ice.
Yeah, when my wife and I were watching this last night, when they were coming back from town, and Isabel too and the kids, and they were driving down and they got stopped by those mobster guys or whatever, cops, I guess, dirty cop. When Isabel too caught that bullet in the chest, my wife and I were like, oh my God, like we were really shocked, because at first you just think that he fired the gun into the sky and into the rocks and stuff, but we had no idea that she had actually caught one of the bullets. So we were actually quite taken aback from the fact that she had been killed there. So that was a really crazy scene.
And I thought Karina Lombard, who played Isabel too, for, like you said, her screen time was very limited, but I thought she had a really great presence. Not only is she like gorgeous, super beautiful. You were sad to see her go. It is kind of interesting that, because she was like 19, 20 and the age difference, but like she was another person that waited. Like she actually is the reverse of what actually Susanna said, because Susanna said, I'll wait for you forever, but she didn't.
Yeah.
But Isabel too, she did wait forever, because they wanted to send her to boarding school, but she refused because, like she said, she was adamant that she was going to marry Tristan.
Yeah, as a child, she was going to marry Tristan one day.
And she did.
And
she probably had the best relationship, but again, like you said, the people that loved him the most broke over him like rocks. It's
a really tragic love story, actually. It's actually something I haven't seen in a very long time, so it was really cool to see.
Also, I just want to say, like, what I loved about throughout the film, like, you could tell Susanna, out of everyone, she liked, obviously, Tristan the most, and you can tell just by, like, her body language and her reactions. Like, obviously, she had a nice, sweet relationship with Samuel, and her relationship with Alfred was cold, but, like, right off the bat, and you can see that how she meets the family. Like, she meets Alfred, it's kind of like a handshake. It's, very kind of more, like, distant and, like, friendship, and then Samuel was more like, it's a playful, oh, he's cute, but then Tristan, right off the bat, you can tell her uterus was doing double monkey backflips, and then especially when he was breaking in that horse and she was watching him at night, you could just see, like, I'm sure she probably had to wipe up the floor because it was probably pretty moist. And I think what really helps that is apparently Brad Pitt and Julia Ormond lived in the same house while shooting in Calgary. And Pitt, you asked about that, just said it added to the sexual tension. I'll leave it at that. So a person can make up their mind what happened in that house.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the floors have to get mopped up after it.
And the bed sheets changed.
But this leads to one of the things in the movie is the unrequited love. Alfred falls instantly in love with Susanna, and you can tell from their first meeting he was smitten with her, and how could you blame him? Like we said, Julia Ormond was just delicioso.
She was.
But on the other hand, you can tell Susanna, like I said, was instantly taken back by Tristan, though she gets in a way rebuffed by Tristan. Yeah, he hooks up with her, but he never really fully commits with her.
That's right.
And so after Samuel's death, she even rebuffs Alfred's advances, and actually she only settles for him after Tristan abandons her. Like, you want to talk about, like, oh, well, I guess I'll take the last Ludlow, why not?
Yeah, talk about getting passed around, eh?
Even when she was with him, and like the jail scene, and Isabella too just died, and their whole family, and her things to say that I sometimes dream that I had your children. And the irony is like, could she have had his children because she couldn't have with Alfred, or maybe
with Alfred, we don't know.
Yeah, and speaking of Alfred, this guy in this movie, I always felt sorry for him and what he went through, but he's also kind of a hypocrite, because the way he blasts Tristan for his relationship for Susanna, as she's essentially Samuel's widow, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he himself fell in love at first sight with her and declared that love at Samuel's grave. Like, why would you think that's a sign of respect? I don't know. I'm just like, talk about ill-timed. They're mourning and he's professing his love, but then he holds that when he walks in on Tristan, and it's it's just due out of jealousy, but he tries to take that higher moral, morality, you know what I mean? Like, that's where I find his character, and Aidan Quinn plays it masterfully.
Yeah, he did a great job. That was awesome.
In the movie that I thought was like not really necessary or placed on, but the magical Native American thing, like it almost hints that Windstab has like maybe a magical connection, because like he has this connection to Tristan, who he obviously incorporated into various Cree rituals and traditions. Windstab can sense when Tristan puts Samuel's heart in the urn, or he cuts it out. He senses return to the ranch, where it's in the movie, but it's like, why was it really that necessary? Because it's almost like a supernatural. When Samuel dies and he cuts his heart out, Windstab wakes up, something bad happened. Like,
well, that's to do with the spiritual stuff that the indigenous people thrive on, and that's my reasoning, that I feel like they wanted to inject some spirituality in the film. So,
well, yeah, but I get that spirituality is fine, and the movie was kind of loaded with that because speak of the Christian God, and also there was Cree spirituality placed in the movie, but it was almost a little too supernatural with a little bit of that connection. Like, I know it's a movie, but it's like I understand their spirituality, and both Native Americans, they had a deep-rooted connection to the earth. Mm-hmm. But I just thought in the movie it was a little more suggestive. But that's just a real minor complaint. It might have been just more of a narrative that they just like, instead of like spending time just like, oh yeah, okay, he feels the pain. It's kind of like, to me it almost reminded me when like Anakin was killing those Tusken people and Yoda's meditating and he hears Qui-Gon's voice and he feels that Anakin's going through pain and suffering. That's what it felt like.
My one nitpick of the film is I think this film only struggles when they're trying to show the brutality of war. Unless you have a big budget, it's hard to inject a war film within a love story. It's only slightly a nitpick for me, but I feel like some of the effects they used during the war sequences were a little cheap, and I get that. It's not a war film, but it's a love story. But when you're injecting war into a story that doesn't surround itself with, it's hard because you need a lot of money to get that across. You know what I mean? When you're actually like in danger, when the bombs are thrown, like to me it just seemed like the 4th of July with all the fireworks going off.
Yeah, well, there's a guy that even punted a football, but actually that does happen.
That happened. Yeah,
that happened.
Yes.
I see what you're saying, but I think today, if this movie was made, obviously the World War I battle would have been, with CGI in the sets, it would be so much more grand. And I see what you're saying, but I actually appreciate for what it was, because really that whole thing was a vehicle for Samuel to lead to his death. So I kind of forgive it on that note. And then the time it was made, it was. But I also think that was also used as to show like Tristan's kind of rampage of revenge, because like Tristan goes on a vendetta rampage through the German lines after Samuel's killed. Later, he nearly beats to death a cop who murdered Isabel too. So you see that this guy, it's almost like, and we see throughout the movie, he actually does suffer from PTSD. And actually, what was cut out of the movie, that when he was scalping Nazis, there was actually scenes where he actually was in an asylum after he got discharged, and he's going through there, and he has this relationship with this a psychologist who's like infatuated with him, not in a romantic way, but he finds it interesting what he did, and you kind of see that. It didn't really play well, so I understood why it was cut out. And also, I think when he leaves again, he actually goes and visits his grandpa William's father when he goes across seas or whatever. But that scene just didn't work.
No, I get it. Like, I understand why the war sequences are in there, which I appreciate. But yeah, sometimes it's just really hard if you don't have the bigger budget. It's kind of hard to make them look as real as possible. But you're right. It was a good vehicle for the storytelling to progress, and so I do appreciate it.
Because they really made it personalized, where when Samuel gets caught in the barbed wire and he gets gas and stuff, like really the only soldiers are 2 guys on that Tommy gun that take him out. So really there's only like 4 actors in that scene.
Yeah, and then later on in the film, that scene kind of plays back to where he's trying to get that young calf out of the barbed wire fence on the farm, and he can't, and he's struggling, and you can just tell the tension is wrapping up again, like he was trying to free his brother.
Well, yeah, and it does trigger him and sets him off on a path where he distances himself from Susanna and the family And because like he does obviously hold himself responsible for Samuel's death. Also, it doesn't help that his brother Alfred has been very suggestive that it's kind of convenient that Samuel died. But when you watch the movie, there was nothing convenient about it.
No.
And the thing is, Colonel Ludlow kind of says, because at the end there, when Tristan takes off and Alfred comes back and he's asking his dad for his blessing for running for office, and obviously, and I really like that Anthony Hopkins, he really plays these scenes like, his gravitas, but he just says, okay guys, what is my son, what do you want out of my son running for office? What do you get out of it? And then obviously Alfred, who's never felt like he's had his father's blessings on the defensive, and not, really seeing that these guys that he's kind of inserted himself with, they're kind of underhand dealing people. They're almost like the local mafia.
Yeah.
And like he said, in my time, it was, I think it was Indians that were, the issue, and kind of puts them in their place. But then Alfred kind of comes out there and he sees that Susanna is, because she just received the letter from Tristan and told her that what we had is dead, move on. You'll never see me again. So she's in despair, and then that kind of sets things off with Alfred, where he's had a vendetta against his brother. So this kind of leads to Alfred shitting on Tristan, and then obviously father has always been defending him, and they have this big blowout. And where I'm going with this is that because Alfred suggests that Samuel might have been conveniently out of the way, his father puts him right back in his place, that he was a soldier and soldiers die. Had nothing to do with anything. He chose to go. And the truth is that Samuel chose his fate, when his story arc is that he wanted to do something grand. He felt like he wasn't good enough for Susanna. And also he's living in his father's footsteps, right? So when they're in the army, he's constantly being babysat by Tristan and his older brother. So he's trying to make his mark, and he's feeling like, I'm not even getting a chance here. So he gets opportunity. But in the end, him leaving his brothers led to his death.
Yeah, that's very true.
And throughout the whole movie, so Anthony Hopkins, really put it out there. But unfortunately for Anthony Hopkins, now I want to get to him. He must have did his research playing a stroke victim, because he played like he looked in a bad way.
He did a great job. I thought it was awesome. He really stole the show for me. Seeing him after the stroke, and then seeing his progression. How like stroke victims can slowly get a little bit better, like where they're non-verbal to slightly verbal, and he played that every so often. He would mumble a few more words, and finally you could actually start to understand him and talking. So I thought his character progression was awesome.
And I thought it was a really good decision when it came to like makeup. Really, Anthony Hopkins, they didn't really do much. All they did was either put a wig or whiten his hair or his wig. And then he just did some facial, due to his act.
Crazy facial stuff.
Some facial stuff to mimic a stroke victim. And it wasn't really that much, because really like the characters do not really age too much. They're subtle, a little bit of lightening of the hair, a little bit this, but you didn't need to do that. And I think movies nowadays try too much to age the actors with prosthetics or CGI. And sometimes, if the movie's good enough, the acting's good enough, a person can kind of overlook a little bit of those details. And I thought this movie was really, maybe it was just the budget, because it was $30 million. It utilized its budgets really well, and it didn't really call, like, we got to have major aging for even Anthony Hopkins. Like, and if you see throughout the movie, he aged really gradually, and it looked like he ate.
Yeah, he did. He was a shining star in this movie for sure. You can never get enough of Anthony Hopkins.
A couple criticisms, like after watching this again, one thing, this for most people will not be a thing to really like nitpick about maybe, but actually how Brad Pitt, after Samuel died, how he actually took out his heart. And this is where movies to me always get it wrong. And now this is just me being an ex-pathologist assistant. If you were to remove someone's heart, you would not stab in that motion like that, to be honest with you. And I've seen in other movies, it's just, he has this big bow knife and stab him, like, there's no way you do that.
No, that I agree. But the scene, it's nice because it calls back to the very beginning when Tristan's a young boy. I believe it was Gordon Tatousis that was narrating when he was hunting on his own, and he killed that wolf or something. I can't remember what it was, but he cut out its heart and released the heart to the spirit. So that was a great callback to that moment.
The movie really does ramp up in the end. Especially after Isabel II's death, that's where things really hit, where things lead to Susanna self-deletion. It's a really powerful scene because then the scene kind of is intercut with Tristan and the family taking out the O'Banion brothers. You know what they did, so they're getting revenge. Decker, he's take out the cop that actually shot the gun off, that the bullet ricocheted and actually killed his daughter.
Yeah.
It's actually highlighted where you see Susanna at that party. You can just see how dejected she is and how lost she is. And then where she cuts her hair and she's sitting at the mirror. And then, of course, she takes the gun, and that's the end of her. Can you just imagine how tough that is for Alfred? Like, you know, when they bury her, that, you know, like tells you like how blind love can be, because real rational person thinking he should know better that Susanna is not someone who would ever love him, accept him, or be happy with him.
Yeah. What I really enjoyed about this movie is that the stakes in the movie were really high, and so it gave you a lot of different emotions throughout the film, and I really appreciated that. It's not like one of those just cheap movies where you can watch it and be like, meh, I watched it. But this one, it took you on a roller coaster of emotions, you know, so that was really cool.
Well, the stakes are really high, and to the point you're like, nobody would get out of this like unscathed or alive. And at the end there, when it looked like, you know, Tristan was going to get it, and then the father, and, you know, what's going on? He's almost aloof, and that he ends up shooting. I wish the scene was not done in, I know they were playing it to kind of draw out the scene, but the slow-mo. I wish it would have been more in regular time. Like, I get why they did it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it works, but I think it personally would have worked better if it wasn't done in slow-mo, especially when Alfred's shot came out of nowhere. Because the thing is, when you watch it and then Tristan's about to take the bullet for his dad, all of a sudden that cop, boom, you're like, oh, okay, that's probably Alfred. I think it would have played better if that scene wasn't slowed. Like, that's his personal taste.
Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah, that's a nitpick too. But all in all, it's a great film.
But outside of that nitpick, throughout the whole movie, that scene when Anthony Hopkins, Colonel Ludlow, embraces his eldest son, it's an endearing hug and squeezing hug. You're my boy. He had nothing to do with Alfred, because even when Isabel II's funeral and Alfred shows up, he didn't even want to talk to him because he blamed his son because he's a government official.
Yeah.
So in the end, Alfred again prove that he was different than what Anthony Hopkins perceived he might be, and for him to kind of embrace. And then when Tristan was going to have to go on the lam, asking him to look after his family, and him saying it's an honor, you just get chills, and it pays off.
It really does. Yeah, it was like a welcoming back to the family, because he'd been so distant for so many years, and finally at that time he kind of came back as one, you know, when he was little.
I know the last scene in the 1960s when he tackles the bear and has that, and it's his death. I know what the scene did, and I understand that, but personally I think I would have been more satisfied if they didn't show that scene and they just kind of left it a little bit. Because sometimes some movies overdo it, and I thought, this is just a personal taste, but I thought that it wasn't necessary.
Yeah, I agree, but I think they were trying to get the bear in one last time. That's my guess. So it works, but then you're right, at the same time it doesn't, because sometimes things are best left unshown. You know, when you just talk about the fate of a character, sometimes it's better just to leave it like that.
Sometimes, yeah, I just thought the epilogue wasn't necessary, because there's some movies that it does work and it doesn't work, and I thought I could do without that epilogue scene.
Yeah.
Him fighting the bear. I understand it's part of Tristan's narrative,
yeah,
and they wanted to highlight that he wasn't supposed to live that long, and he actually outlived everybody. I don't know.
Yeah, even my wife was like, oh, that was kind of a weird ending.
Yeah. Like you said, throughout the movie, to me, it's a really good film, and it's great editing and everything, but there's some scenes and some decisions where it's a little bit kind of like jarring, where you're like, oh, okay. But other than that, man, this was a fun rewatch. This is a movie I highly recommend if you're a Brad Pitt fan and an Anthony Hopkins, and you want to see good acting and you like period drama films. Should be a go-to watch.
I 100% agree. I'll probably actually catch this one again because I enjoyed it a lot. So I'll definitely watch it again. Probably, maybe next year. But yeah, I'll definitely watch it again.
Definitely is a good one to watch. Right now, we're going to go to our Did You Know?
That's right, Raz. Did you know that it took producer and director Edward Zwick 17 years to get this project up on screen.
Takes a long time to get these types of movies made.
Sure does.
Turk, did you know the brothers enlisted in the Canadian Army and appear to have served in the 10th Battalion Canadian Expeditionary Force by the badges on their uniforms? The 10th Battalion was formed from the 103rd Regiment Calgary Rifles, which was known as the Calgary Highlanders. Several soldiers extras were current members of the Calgary Highlanders. Did you know that?
I did not know that. Did you know that Johnny Depp was offered and turned down the role for Tristan?
I did not know that. Did you know that when shooting the scene which Isabella 2 is shot and Tristan is beaten up by the policeman, the actor playing the policeman accidentally hit Brad Pitt on the head with the baton, giving him a black eye. Soon afterward, they shot the tennis scene near the beginning. They had to make up a few lines about Pitt's shiner to explain it. He does have kind of a shiner there.
Yes, he does.
When he's breaking in that horse.
Awesome. Well, that's all I got.
Well, that's all I got.
Well, what does that mean?
I look forward to doing more period pieces like this in the future. And like I said, this is a movie you can watch by yourself. You could be a dude and it's cool because it's Brad Pitt and all kinds of stuff. He kills Nazis.
Yeah.
Also, if you like the romance and stuff, it's got it there. If you like the high drama, it's got it there. If you want to see Julia Ormond at her peak, this is the one to watch.
Yes, and ladies, if you like hot, steamy sex scenes, you're going to want to check this one out.
Yes, and also having a bath in the river or whatever. All right, on that note, thanks for listening and watching.
All right, bye.
If you want to see more videos like this, help us out by subscribing and liking our videos. And of course, we would love to hear your feedback in our comment section. We appreciate all of your support. Until then, stay vigilant and stay away from all those soy bays.